الله بالخير. لعل أوروبا ترتعد من حرب لا يريدها شعبها. الذعر ليس شعبيا بل سياسي خالص. نخب تطلق صفارات الخطر فيما الجيوش خاوية والخزائن مستنزفة والمجتمعات منزوعة العسكرة حتى العظم والنخاع. تنظر موسكو إلى حديث وقف إطلاق النار كخدعة محكمة، فسحة التقاط أنفاس لحلف الناتو لا طريق راسخ إلى السلام. روسيا لا تطلب هدنة عابرة بل نظاما أمنيا جديدا بأكمله. أوكرانيا المسمرة إلى حلم الانضمام إلى الناتو واقفة في المنتصف عاجزة عن الحركة. فماذا يحدث حين يصطدم غرب هستيري بروسيا الثابتة والصبورة؟ هل تستطيع قارة تخشى الحرب أكثر من كل شيء أن تواجه قوة ترفض الترقيعات المؤقتة والتسويات التجميلية؟ وإذا لم يكن أحد مستعدا للتخلي عن سرديته، فمن الذي يعد نفسه حقا للسلام؟ ومن الذي يتهيأ بهدوء للحرب المقبلة؟ نرحب بكم ونرى ونسمع أكثر مع أرنو ديفيلي، الفقيه القانوني الدولي والمستشار السياسي الفرنسي الأمريكي في البعد الأقرب. هذه الميادين وأنا زينب صفار، خليكم ويانا. Salam and welcome to Mayadeen. This is Zainab al-Saffar for the Proximate Aspect, and my dear guest Arnaud Develay, French-American international jurist and political consultant. Arnaud, it's great to have you with us. How are you doing?
Hello, Zainab. Always a pleasure, and thank you for inviting me.
Most welcome. Well, let's start with the big picture. Today, how do you see Russia-Ukraine unfolding, especially in reference to your most recent book, Foreign Entanglements, Ukraine, Biden, and the Fractured American Political Consensus?
Well, it's all in the title, I guess, of the book. We obviously have somewhat of a dichotomy on the part of Washington as far as the resolution of the conflict is concerned, with an administration that seems in disarray, relying on a non-cabinet member, at least not confirmed by the Senate, doing the shuttle diplomacy to Moscow, whereas the official Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, is seemingly out of the picture. Mm-hmm. At the same time, we have people like Lindsey Graham, who today, again, is seemingly advocating for a continuation of the support to Ukraine. Mm-hmm. So it's really difficult to find out whether or not Donald Trump, per se, the Trump administration, has all the required levers to, first of all, navigate through what seems to be a series of leaks mm-hmm. and sabotage actions going on all over and all around him, not to mention across the ocean in Europe.
Yes, but Arnaud, I'm sorry, Arnaud, allow me to jump in here. Is it only the decision in the hands of President Trump or the deep state?
Well, that's an interesting question. I mean, on the surface of things, the president of the United States, as Truman used to say, the buck stops here. So if he really is the boss, then it should be all about him slamming his fist on the table and saying, what I say goes, and whoever is not on the program, I will take care of him. Mm-hmm. But as you allude to, it's not as simple as Donald Trump, the one-man authority, the head of the executive branch, being able to impose his will on a permanent bureaucracy which has been seeing president come and go. Vladimir Putin himself said several times that, as soon as, and he's seen a lot of US presidents in his 25 years in office come and go, and he was relating one day that as soon as a new president gets elected, next thing you know, you've got a whole slew of little men in black suits coming around, and whatever might be discussed and agreed upon in principle, usually within a couple of days, seems to be somewhat complicated to implement. So that tells you everything you need to know about the US political chain of command, as it were.
Right. As of late December 2025, the rhetoric surrounding the Russia-Ukraine conflict has reached a boiling point, as experts say, characterized by a profound transatlantic divorce between the new US administration's transactional approach and Europe's increasingly militant last line of defense stance. Tulsi Gabbard, the director of the National Intelligence, her rhetoric demonstrates, Arnaud, that particular stance. She bluntly and explicitly stated that US intelligence assesses Russia does not even have the capability to conquer and occupy Ukraine, and this is her quote, of course, let alone invade or occupy Europe. So she also accused NATO and EU leaders of fomenting hysteria and fear among their populations to gear up for the escalation of the conflict. If Russia is as weak as Ms. Gabbard says, if they can't even hold onto a province in Ukraine, why is the European Union suddenly building a private 150 billion euro army? Why is Emmanuel Macron talking about expeditionary forces like he's a Napoleon? Why is NATO, Arnaud, trying to start a world war? What is she saying here?
Well, it's not as much what she's saying as what she's not saying. What she's not saying is that they are, again, transnational interests who are bent on seeing the conflict continue for whatever reason, not least of which the fact that they've already secured, thanks to their proxy in Ukraine, Zelensky, control over some of the most fertile agricultural land. They would also would like to secure an access to the Black Sea, which is why we also hear a lot about Odessa and the French, or at least the coalition of the volunteer, so-called coalition of the volunteer, being somewhat positioned in a way where they could make a dash towards Odessa. But all those scenarios have been shot down summarily by senior Russian officials times and times again. To the extent any of those countries send troops on the ground, Russia will consider them as hostile forces and they will be taken out, essentially. So, but what this means is that any kind of momentum toward a resolution of the conflict is obviously being undermined by disinformation campaign, and Tulsi Gabbard knows pretty much about that because she took the time to develop an interest in the Syrian conflict, and this conflict was by and large characterized by disinformation, if not outright propaganda and lie campaign. I don't have to come back to the Huta so-called chemical attack.
Right.
So it's the same thing. Mm-hmm. We're not out of the bush. I mean, in the sense that we're dealing with people. What is NATO? NATO is basically the gravy train for tens of thousands of people who've been basically benefiting from the existence of this organization, which should have been dissolved in 1990, 1991, some would say. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And there were papers alluding to this. I mean, the quid pro quo bearing on reunification of Germany was predicated on NATO not expanding one inch eastward. And we all know what happened in the last 30 years. So, sure. A lot of people are trying to basically defend their interest, and they're very interested interests.
Right, but why does the European leadership express their willingness to prolong the proxy war against Russia indefinitely? If Europe is politically hysterical but militarily hollow, who actually benefits, Arnaud, from keeping the fear narrative alive, particularly when societies are culturally demilitarized and unwilling to fight?
Well, you're talking about people like Emmanuel Macron, like Chancellor Merz,
Van
people
der
like,
Leyen, yes.
yes. Well, basically those transnational interests, those secret societies, some would say, the Bilderberg Group and all those transnational investment funds like BlackRock, they all work together in trying to basically get beyond the nation state as a measuring unit. And their plan is to create this European superstate. But to the extent they're not exactly where they want to be in the agenda, the economies of each of those member states is collapsing. There's a complete lack of confidence in the future, and they're being criticized, and their legacy is under fire, under scrutiny.
Mm-hmm.
So when everything fails, what do? That's a playbook, classic. Basically, you go to war, or you create the impression that a war is imminent and there's an existential threat to the so-called European project with all of its so-called, again, core values. And that existential threat is, as it has been decided in high places, should be Russia.
Mm-hmm.
So this is why we hear, this kind of rhetoric for quite a lot of months now, despite the fact that on the military front, the situation is catastrophic.
Right.
And those countries, to the extent they can send contingents, they won't be making a dent into the overall military situation.
Well, some might argue that the European political echelon is in its death throes. It's widely unpopular, and that a reckoning for the elite in Europe is inevitable due to their failed policies, as you said, and loss of respect. What are your impressions in this regard, Arnaud?
Well, that's exactly what you just said. I mean, those people have politically become completely demonetized, including someone like Merz, who was elected last year and who's already, if they were polls recently in local elections in Germany, and it showed that the CDU is already behind AfD. So if there were to be general parliamentary election in Germany today, chances are Merz would be out and AfD would be in. But again, there are so many, those people are just puppets. They are not political figures per se. They have no gravitas on anything, whether it's history, whether it's about caring for the well-being of their constituents. They are basically paid agent. They've been co-opted and cultivated for many years. And it's not a coincidence that they all happen to be in power at the same time. It's a very delicate construct, which has taken decades to put together. And in that sense,
right. As a European, one might ask a question here. Is Europe's Ukraine strategy actually strategy, or is it continental suicide?
Well, they say we never allow a good crisis to go to waste. And by creating economic downturn, bearing on the policies that have been advocated for at least 5 decades now, going back to the late 70s, the idea is to now create a managerial model predicated on non-elected Politburo members at the European Commission, who basically answer directly to lobbyist group of very large entities. And to the extent now it's all about control, they're putting everything in place now, whether it's the vaccination agenda, whether it's the green agenda, whether it's what they call the revisionist powers. The term is very connoted, pointing out to Russia, but also China. Europe is trying to basically become this supra-federal state, super-federal state. And we all know how this ended up with the Soviet Union. It goes against the anthropological aspiration of people. So it's doomed to fail. But they don't want to go quietly in the night. And they are willing to basically weather the Trump administration, hoping in the first place that next year's midterm elections will result in the Democrats, who are more inclined to follow globalist policies to get back into the control of the Congress, tried to besiege Donald Trump with all kind of institutional procedure, not least of them being the impeachment. Mm-hmm. We have now the Epstein files coming out with a vengeance. Every day we're finding out more things bearing on Trump's, what did he know, when did he know it? Obviously, there's a lot, that was hidden from us. And the Democrats are going to have a field day on that. So we can already, as of today, said that the second Trump term is a failure and Trump is a lame duck. He has no political capital. He's completely spent his political capital.
Right. So allow me to take you back to Europe. If Europe is irrelevant, what is the new geopolitical architecture here that will replace the transatlantic alliance? And who will be the first European state, in your opinion, to defect to Moscow?
Well, I wouldn't say that Europe is irrelevant. They have institutional and bureaucratic levers that are very well entrenched. To the extent they are irrelevant politically and economically, we could say it is the case in thus far as comparing them to countries like China, India, basically countries which in the 21st century are characterized by a large industrial base and large demographics. Europe is experiencing a demographic winter. As you mentioned earlier, they disindustrialized, decades ago. They only rely on services now. They are heavily indebted. France alone is over 3,500 billion euros in debt. It's 113% of GDP. So I would say that, yes, they are on this level completely irrelevant, but owing to the fact that they are the Trojan horse used by those transnational interests in trying to ferret out Russia away from China, or at least to undermine the rise or the return of Russia among the great power. And then immediately afterward, and that's basically what the US doctrine that was released, the military doctrine that was released a couple of weeks ago alludes to, contain China. They want to contain China. In an ideal world, what we would like to see is a natural realignment of spheres of influence among those three countries, US, Russia, and China, with probably India coming to join down the road, not too far down the road. Mm-hmm. But Europe has decided that they're going to try to be the party pooper here, and they're going to try to do everything they can to prevent this realignment of geopolitics from taking place.
But if any of the European states will defect to Moscow, which one do you think will do that?
Well, right now, we obviously have Orban is the leader of the rebellion within Europe, closely followed by Fico, and the new prime minister of Czech Republic. One could also fairly say that Meloni could also become an important, key member of this rebellious coalition.
Right.
And where Meloni goes, Macron is not far behind. We saw it over the weekend when they were basically taking hostage all the heads of state of Europe until they got him to agree on confiscating, stealing, some would say,
right,
the Russian assets. But when Meloni realized that Russia, and they don't have to go through a lot of commissions and intermediary steps to do so, it's one stroke of the pen by the master of the Kremlin, as I like to call him, they could confiscate no less than $127 billion or euros worth of assets located in Russia. And not unsubstantially, within this 127 billion, we have the bank UniCredit, which is an Italian bank, a very, very big player. And Meloni basically weighed the pros and cons and realized this was going to be suicide. So she pulled out, and Macron, who we had seen a few months back with Merz and Starmer in that midnight train, basically stayed mum and allowed this shift in momentum to take place without raising any voice. So Merz found himself basically holding the bags, and that was it. But, they haven't said their last word yet.
Let's wait and see. Don't you believe, Arnaud, that the Trump NSS is a declaration of war on the EU elite? And don't you think also that NATO now is officially a corpse?
Well, to the extent Washington will need some kind of retooled version of NATO, we're seeing it right now in the East Asia Pacific area with the creation of what are, by all accounts, avatars of NATO, with a construct involving the Philippines, South Korea, Japan, New Zealand, Australia. So if that's not an offshoot or privileged exclusive partnership partner, of NATO, then I don't know what it is.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just a change of terms, but the philosophy remains the same. You have a coalition of proxy states who operate more or less under the same view of the world the last 80 years. It's just that the onus is going to be more on new areas, not as much Europe. NATO was first and foremost created in 1949 to contain the Soviet expansionism, or at least that's the way it was sold to the public. But
Right.
it doesn't mean that this dynamic is going to change or disappear altogether. Far from it.
Sure. Arnaud Develay, French-American international jurist and political consultant. Thank you so much for joining us today, Arnaud. Pure pleasure to have you always.
Thank you for having me.
Most welcome. تعد عملية غلاديو أخطر شبكات جيوش الظل شبه العسكرية التي أسستها الاستخبارات الأمريكية CIA والبريطانية MI6 والناتو إبان الحرب الباردة. ورغم أن التسمية اللاتينية غلاديو أي السيف القصير ذا حدين خصصت لفرع إيطاليا، فإنها أصبحت مظلة لشبكة أخطبوطية من الجيوش السرية العابرة لأوروبا الغربية. تظل هذه العملية الفصل الأكثر قتامة وإثارة للجدل في تاريخ الاستخبارات، إذ انحرفت من مهمة أطلق عليها دفاعية خلف خطوط العدو إلى تورط مباشر في الإرهاب المحلي. اعتمدت العملية ما عرف باستراتيجية التوتر التي ارتكزت على 3 أعمدة. أولاً التدخل السياسي السافر في الشؤون الداخلية. ثانياً عمليات تضليل لخلق الفوضى وصناعتها. ثالثاً انعدام الرقابة الحقيقية، حيث عملت هذه الخلايا بعيداً عن المحاسبة البرلمانية، خاضعة فقط لأوامر أباطرة الاستخبارات ولجان التنسيق في الناتو. بالنسبة إلى كثيرين تمثل غلاديو النموذج الصارخ لعمليات الدولة العميقة، حيث تتحرك هياكل عسكرية غامضة خارج نطاق القانون والديمقراطية. واليوم يبرز تساؤل ملح ومشروع: هل الهجمات الإرهابية الغامضة في موسكو وغيرها من المدن ليست سوى ظلال لغلاديو بنسخة عصرية متجددة؟ من كل الميادين حياكم.